Because ultimately Israel is an outpost for the West. That's what it is. That's all it is. And here's what I tell people. Like, you know, the US always talks in this, like, this is this propaganda of shared values, right? Shared history and the only democracy in the Middle East. I believe genuinely that if Israel didn't serve the United States in the region, if it wasn't an asset, they would not think twice about Israel. And that includes Jewish people. Because truthfully, the history of Western civilization's relationship to Jewish people has been of one of, if not apathy, like indifference, contempt. That's been its history, right? And so right now, you see this because the people who closed their borders on Jewish refugees during the Holocaust was this country. Was the West, was the British. These were the people who closed their borders and told them go to Palestine, right? And so these people, it's opportunistic. It's in the same way that the Ukrainian lives are now being opportunistically expended. And that's what's so sad about this country that talks in terms of, oh, good and evil. This is what the U.S. is about, yada, yada. No, the U.S. is about using all of these oppressed people. Because at the end of the day, these people are oppressed in service of whether it's the Kurds in the region, like the Kurdish people, when they're used by the U.S. to capture oil fields in Syria, right? And then the moment that ISIS is on their door, they kind of say, wait a minute, like, I don't know if we want to expend this sort of energy, or the moment that it doesn't become convenient, they drop chip. That's how the U.S. works with these people, with these minority groups. So and here's like, just to touch on this last question around like, and this is why I think the path forward for Jewish people around anti-Semitism is the struggle against anti-Semitism must be an internationalized struggle, must be a solidarity struggle. It must be a struggle against anti-Muslim, anti-Black, and it has to be internationalized, right? The siege mentality that exists, that's been generated by Zionism as a politics, is about the West.
Yes.
Because a military outpost requires a siege mentality.
Right.
And you, like, imagine being the president of the United States telling Jewish people in this country you're not safe. What does that mean here? That's an abdication of your responsibility to protect your citizens within your country. That you need to have a perpetual state somewhere else in the event that you fail to protect them.
Right.
Instead, it should be Jewish people should be protected everywhere they are. Right? And they, not just Jewish people, everyone should be protected wherever they are. So, I mean, like, I think this is the principles that undergird the Palestinian struggle, but progressive struggle more generally. I'm not saying that Palestinian society is progressive or Palestinian resistance factions are progressive. I'm saying the struggle for Palestine is progressive. In the same way, the struggle against anti-Semitism is progressive and should be progressive. In the same way, you could spell it out.
Speaking of the argument you just made about how this is really about Western domination, or how Israel is really utilized. It's not about standing with persecuted people or preventing another Holocaust, right? Here's Joe Biden kind of admitting that in, I believe, 1984.
Time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel. The second part is people.
So
this is an excellent clip.
So he agrees with you.
Because, you know, that's the same reason that the U.S. supports Saudi Arabia. It's the same reason, it's the same reason that Taiwan is propped up. It's the same reason the Ukraine is supported. Like, it's all just, they're proxies ultimately for the U.S.
Yeah.
And here's, like, I think Zionism as a project was so, like, it arose out of a moment of Western anti-Semitism. Some people try to trace Zionism to, like, the Holocaust, but it obviously predates the Holocaust by 50, 60, 70 years, right? It was in response to anti-Semitism in the West. But in fact, it was a product of three trends: anti-Semitism, colonialism as the method, and nationalism as the ontology, like the character. We need to create a nation through colonization to respond to anti-Semitism. That is the emergence of historical trends that produced the Zionist movement. Right. But historically, Jewish people said there were different currents that answered, right?
Right. There was a huge anti-Zionist Jewish tradition.
Right, that revolved around internationalism,
right,
socialism, communism. Our response to fascism is solidarity. Our response to fascism is working class struggle.
Right.
That was the dominant response. Now, many of those people and many of those movements were genocided by the Nazi regime.
Yeah.
Right. And Zionism basically came to dominate out of the Holocaust. Like it came out of that moment. Right.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Zionism as a project of colonialism, as a colonial project, concentrated Jewish people in an area that required an ethnic cleansing of another people, which rendered Jewish people perpetually unsafe. That to me is like the fundamental historical mistake, if you can call it one, of Zionism.
I mean, the irony is it's not good for Jews either.
Yeah, it's not good for Jews either. No, it's not. It's not. It's not good for Jews in a number of different ways. The destruction of diaspora communities and diaspora culture, of Yiddish, of the cultural life, of the richness and depth of Sephardic Judaism, of Arabic Judaism, of all of these different trends of Ashkenazi Judaism, right? Like the depth and history of French Jews, of British Jews, of Moroccan and Yemeni Jews, of their food, of their culture and custom, and through the creation of an artificial country that sought to make a new shared language of Hebrew, right? Like resurrecting it from the dead, right? A nationality that is taking from this area and that area, right? That has really historically no depth. The depth that exists within Israeli culture is Jewish culture from wherever they came, right? Morocco, Yemen, Iraq. And, there's a lot of history to go through